The soup burned. Harper Sinclair's scream caught in her throat as the hot liquid soaked through her blonde hair, dripped down her face, blurred her vision with a mixture of tomato and tears. The ceramic bowl clattered against the linoleum floor, spinning once, twice before settling into silence. Brody Lawson laughed. Actually laughed. The sound cut through the diner like a knife through soft butter, sharp and cruel and utterly devoid of humanity. His buddy Trent grabbed Harper's grilled cheese sandwich and ground it into her lap, smearing butter and melted cheddar across her favorite blue dress. Clay had his phone out, recording every humiliating second, his laughter so hard he nearly dropped the device. Harper's wheelchair stayed locked in place. She couldn't run, couldn't hide, couldn't do anything but sit there drowning in tomato soup and shame, while the entire Rosewood diner watched in frozen silence. Not one person moved. Not one person helped. Just stares and whispers and phones being pulled from pockets to capture her destruction. 3 men, 1 disabled woman, 0 humanity. The back booth scraped against the floor. 5 leather vests stood up in unison. The Hells Angels had seen enough. But before we get there, you need to understand something about Harper Sinclair. You need to understand why a 28-year-old woman with cerebral palsy sat alone in a small-town Montana diner every Tuesday afternoon. You need to understand the 5 years of silence that led to this moment. You need to understand the loneliness that had become her constant companion, as familiar as the wheelchair she'd been using since she was 6 years old. Harper had wanted one thing that Tuesday, just one normal lunch. Tomato soup and grilled cheese, her usual order. Mabel at the counter knew it by heart, had been serving Harper the same meal every week for 3 years now. The Rosewood Diner sat on the corner of Main Street and 5th Avenue in Millbrook, Montana. Population 4,000 and change. The kind of town where everybody knew everybody, where secrets didn't stay secret for long, and where a woman in a wheelchair stuck out like a sore thumb no matter how hard she tried to blend in. Harper had moved here 5 years ago after the accident, after her parents died, after the insurance money ran out and she needed somewhere cheap to live. Millbrook fit the bill. Small town, low rent, quiet streets. She'd thought it would be easier here. Sometimes it was. Mostly it wasn't. The bell above the door chimed at exactly 12:15 when Harper wheeled herself into the diner that fateful Tuesday. Late October sunlight streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the checkered floor. The lunch rush had already started. Farmers in dusty boots occupied the counter stools. A young mother wrestled with 2 toddlers in a corner booth. Old men argued about politics near the register, their voices rising and falling like a tide that never quite reached shore. Harper made her way to her usual spot, the corner table near the window, the one with the best view of Main Street and enough space for her wheelchair to fit without blocking the aisle. Mabel had learned to keep it open on Tuesdays, a small kindness that meant more than Harper could ever express. Mabel appeared almost immediately, coffee pot in hand, smile lines crinkling around her tired eyes. 55 years old and working double shifts at a diner that probably should have closed a decade ago. But Mabel loved this place, loved the people who came through, loved the routine of it all. "Honey, you look tired," Mabel said, pouring coffee without being asked. "The usual today." Harper nodded, managed a small smile. "You know me too well." That was it. That was all Harper wanted. Sit in her corner, read her book. Pretend for 1 hour that she wasn't the girl everyone stared at, the girl people whispered about, the girl who made them uncomfortable just by existing in their space. She pulled out her worn copy of Persuasion. Jane Austen had become her closest friend these past 5 years. The characters never judged her. The stories never changed. Captain Wentworth still loved Anne Elliot after 8 long years of separation. Some things in this world could be counted on. Harper had just found her place in chapter 12 when the bell above the door chimed again. She didn't look up at first, didn't notice the 3 young men who walked in like they owned the place, didn't see Brody Lawson's eyes scan the room and lock onto her wheelchair with predatory interest. Brody was 23 years old, born and raised in Millbrook, the kind of guy who'd been a high school football star and never quite got over it. His glory days were behind him, now replaced by a string of dead-end jobs and a rap sheet that kept getting longer. He'd been in trouble before. Assault charges, bar fights, the usual small-town tough guy nonsense. Currently on probation for putting a man in the hospital last summer. Should have been more careful, should have kept his head down, But Brody Lawson had never been good at keeping his head down. Trent and Clay flanked him like loyal dogs, 24 and 22 respectively. Not much going on behind their eyes. The kind of guys who followed whoever seemed strongest, laughed at whatever seemed funny, never stopped to think about consequences. They spotted Harper at the same moment Brody did. "Hey, Trent, Clay, you seeing this Harper's stomach drop?" She knew that tone, the cruel curiosity, the predatory amusement. She'd heard it 1,000 times in her 28 years, in schoolyards and shopping malls, in movie theaters and restaurants. Everywhere she went, someone always found her disability entertaining. She gripped her book tighter, stared at the page without seeing the words. "Ignore them, they'll get bored. They always get bored eventually." Brody slid into the booth across from her table. Uninvited, unwanted. His buddies crowded in beside him, blocking any hope of escape. Not that Harper could escape anyway. Her wheelchair was wedged against the wall. The only way out was past them. "Clay, get your phone out," Brody said, a grin spreading across his face. "This is going to be gold. Please don't." Harper hated how small her voice sounded. How weak. "Please, I'm just trying to eat my lunch." Brody leaned forward. His breath smelled like cheap beer and cheaper cigarettes. The kind of smell that clung to clothes and skin and followed a person around like a bad reputation. "People like you shouldn't take up space in here," he said. "Freaks belong in institutions, not regular places where regular people are trying to eat." The words hit Harper like physical blows. She'd heard variations of them her whole life. "You don't belong here. You're making people uncomfortable. Why don't you stay home where nobody has to look at you?" She opened her mouth to respond, to defend herself, to say something, anything that might make them leave her alone. Then Mabel arrived with the food. The older woman set down the tray with trembling hands. She could see what was happening, could feel the tension crackling through the air, like static electricity before a storm. Her eyes darted between Harper and the three men, uncertain, afraid. "Here you go, honey. Tomato soup and grilled cheese." Harper looked up at Mabel, tried to smile, tried to pretend everything was normal. "Thank you." That's when Brody moved. His hands shot out, grabbed the bowl of soup, lifted it high. For one terrible moment, time seemed to stop. Harper saw what was about to happen, saw it coming like a train bearing down on a stalled car. But she couldn't move, couldn't react, could only sit there as Brody tilted the bowl and poured the contents directly onto her head. The soup was hot, not scalding, but hot enough to burn, hot enough to make Harper gasp as the liquid soaked through her hair, ran down her face, dripped on to her shoulders and chest. The smell of tomatoes filled her nostrils, mixed with something else. Humiliation. Pure, undiluted humiliation. Brody laughed. That cruel cutting sound that would haunt Harper's nightmares for months to come. Trent grabbed her sandwich and ground it into her lap, twisting his wrist to spread the damage as far as possible. Melted cheese and butter smeared across her dress, mixing with the soup to create a mess that would never fully wash out. Clay captured every moment on his phone. His laughter was the worst of all, high-pitched and gleeful. The laughter of a child pulling wings off flies. The laughter of someone who had never learned empathy and probably never would. "Oh my God," Clay wheezed between giggles. The look on her face, "This is going to go viral." Harper sat frozen, paralyzed by shock and shame, and a grief so profound it stole her breath. The entire diner had gone silent. 30 people at least, maybe more, all watching the spectacle unfold. Nobody moved, nobody spoke, nobody stepped forward to help. The tears came without permission. Harper couldn't stop them. Her whole body shook with silent sobs as soup dripped from her chin and landed in her useless lap. She wanted to scream, wanted to fight back, wanted to do something, anything other than sit there and take it. But what could she do? Her legs didn't work. Her arms were weak. She was alone in a room full of people who were content to watch her be destroyed. Brody high-fived Trent. The smack of their palms echoed through the silent diner like a gunshot. "That was perfect. Let's bounce before someone calls the cops." They swaggered toward the exit. Three young men without a shred of conscience between them. Clay was already uploading the video, his thumbs flying across the screen. 200 views already. We're going to be famous. Famous. They thought destroying a disabled woman would make them famous. And the worst part was, they were probably right. The internet loved cruelty, loved watching people suffer. Loved the cheap thrill of someone else's humiliation. Mabel rushed over with napkins. Her hands shook as she dabbed at Harper's soaked hair. Honey, oh God, I'm calling the police. Don't! Harper's voice broke on the word. Please, I just want to go home. But they assaulted you. Mabel's eyes glistened with unshed tears. They can't just get away with it. Please. The word came out as a whisper, a plea, a surrender. Harper didn't have the energy to fight, didn't have the strength to pursue justice. She just wanted to disappear, to crawl into a hole somewhere and never come out. Mabel's hands trembled as she continued cleaning the soup from Harper's hair. An elderly couple shuffled over with more napkins. A young mother offered her cardigan. Everyone was so kind now, so helpful, so eager to assist. After it was too late. What Harper didn't see were the 5 people in the back booth, the ones who had watched the entire incident unfold with growing fury, the ones who hadn't intervened because they wanted to see how far it would go, how deep the cruelty ran, how thoroughly humanity had failed. Hank Caldwell set his coffee cup down with careful precision, slow, deliberate. The ceramic clicked against the saucer like a judge's gavel calling the court to order. His jaw worked back and forth, grinding his teeth against the rage that threatened to consume him. 48 years old, former Marine, current president of the Millbrook chapter of the Hells Angels. Hank had seen combat in 2 wars, had watched friends die in deserts halfway around the world, had done things that still haunted his dreams in the darkest hours of the night. But nothing he'd seen in combat had prepared him for watching 3 grown men assault a woman in a wheelchair for sport. His wife Jolene touched his arm, not to stop him, to agree with him. She was 45 years old, a nurse practitioner at the regional hospital, and she'd spent her career caring for people who couldn't care for themselves. The scene that had just unfolded made her physically ill. Relieving the question came from Ox, 6'5", 300 pounds of muscle wrapped around a heart of gold. He'd been cracking his knuckles since the first drop of soup hit Harper's hair. His real name was Owen, but nobody had called him that since high school. Hank's eyes tracked the 3 men as they approached the door. Right behind those punks, his voice was quiet, deadly quiet. The voice of a man who had learned long ago that the loudest threats were often the emptiest and the softest promises were the ones you needed to fear. About damn time. Willa pushed back her chair. 35 years old, built like a fighter, worked at the women's shelter 3 towns over. She'd seen what cruelty could do to vulnerable people, had dedicated her life to protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Got everything on video. Flint held up his phone. 31 years old tech genius, the club's go-to guy for anything electronic. His hands were steady despite the anger burning in his chest. Every second recorded, every word captured. Jolene kissed Hank's cheek, a brief press of lips against weathered skin. Go teach them some manners. I'll stay with her. Hank stood, 6'2", 230 pounds. The Hells Angels patch on his leather vest caught the light, the winged skull gleaming like a promise of violence. People noticed. People always noticed when angels moved with purpose. The diner fell even more silent, if such a thing was possible. Conversations died mid-sentence. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Every eye in the room tracked the 5 leather-clad figures as they walked toward the door. Not fast, not slow, purposeful. Outside, Brody's pickup truck was still running. The engine rumbled like a beast waiting to be unleashed. The 3 idiots piled in, still laughing, still congratulating themselves on their brilliant performance. 200 views already, Clay crowed from the back seat. This is going to blow up. Hank knocked on the driver's window. Once. Hard. The sound of knuckles against glass cut through the laughter like a blade through paper. Brody looked up, annoyed at the interruption. He rolled down the window, already forming a smart remark on his lips. Then he saw the vest, saw the patch, saw the 4 other angels standing behind Hank like a wall of leather and muscle and barely contained violence. The color drained from Brody's face. What do you want, old man? The bravado in his voice was paper-thin, transparent, the kind of false courage that crumbled at the first sign of real resistance. Hank leaned down. His face filled the window frame, blocking out the October sunlight. Get out of the truck. Look, man. Brody's voice cracked on the second word. We were just having some fun. No harm done. No harm done. Hank let the words hang in the air between them. Three grown men assault a disabled woman in public film, it for entertainment, and you call that no harm done. Trent grabbed Brody's arm from the passenger seat. His face had gone the color of old milk. Dude, those are Hell's Angels. Actual Hell's Angels. I know what they are. Brody tried to sound tough. Failed miserably. I'm not scared. Ox moved to the driver's door. His massive hand closed around the handle, pulled it open with a screech of protesting metal. Brody practically fell out of the truck in his haste to comply. You think you're tough? Hank stepped in close. So close, Brody had to crane his neck back to meet his eyes. You think picking on a woman in a wheelchair makes you a man? It was just a prank. Brody's voice had gone high and reedy, the voice of a bully who had finally met someone that he couldn't intimidate. Just something for social media. Everyone does it. A prank. Hank's voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. Somehow that was worse than shouting. You assaulted a woman who can't fight back. Filmed it. Posted it for the world to see. That's not a prank. That's a crime. That's who you are. Clay tried to slip out the back door phone clutched to his chest like a lifeline. Willa intercepted him, plucked the device from his trembling fingers with the casual ease of someone removing a toy from a child. I'll hold on to this, she said. Evidence needs to be preserved. Hey, that's my property. You can't just take it. Willa smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. So was that woman's dignity before you trashed it for likes? She scrolled through the phone, found the video already uploaded to 3 different platforms. Oh, look, already posted. That'll make the evidence easy to collect. Brody's false bravado crumbled completely. His shoulders sagged. His eyes dropped to the pavement. Okay, we'll apologize or whatever. Is that what you want? Not to me. Hank's eyes were chips of ice, blue, and cold and utterly merciless. You're apologizing to her. On your knees, what? You heard me. You can't make us. The protest was weak, desperate, the last gasp of defiance from a man who knew he'd already lost. Can't we? Flint held up his own phone. We've got the whole incident recorded. Assault on a disabled person. Let's see how Detective Morrison feels about that. You know him, right? The one whose nephew uses a wheelchair. The 3 men exchanged panicked looks. Millbrook was a small town. Everybody knew everybody. And everybody knew that Detective Morrison took disability rights seriously. Very seriously. And if the cops don't interest you, Willa added, we can make sure every person in this county knows what you did. Every business, every shop, every potential employer. The Hells Angels have a long memory and a lot of friends. Trent looked ready to cry. His lower lip actually trembled. Okay, fine. We'll do it. Good. Hank grabbed Brody's shirt. Not violent, not aggressive, just firm. The grip of a man who knew exactly how much force to apply and when to apply it. But first you need to understand something. He pulled Brody close enough to see the fear swimming in the younger man's eyes, close enough to smell the cheap beer on his breath. My daughter has Down syndrome. She's 15 years old. Smartest kid I know. Funny, kind. The best thing that ever happened to me. Hank's voice stayed level, but his eyes blazed with a fire that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with love. And people like you treat her like garbage every single day. They stare, they laugh, they talk to her like she's stupid. They act like she's not human, like she doesn't deserve to exist. Brody tried to pull away. Couldn't. Hank's grip was iron. So when I see 3 grown men gang up on a disabled woman for fun, when I hear you laughing while she cries, when I watch you film her humiliation like it's entertainment, yeah, it gets personal. He released Brody's shirt. The younger man stumbled backward, nearly fell. Now we're going inside. You're apologizing. You're meaning it. And if I see one smirk, one hint that you're not sincere, Ox here will teach you some proper manners. He paused. And Ox isn't as gentle as I am. Ox grinned. Gold teeth flashed in the afternoon light. His knuckles cracked like small caliber gunfire. Trent looked ready to vomit. Clay had started crying, tears streaming down his face as the reality of his situation finally sank in. Even Brody, for all his earlier swagger, seemed to shrink into himself. Move. Willa's command cut through the afternoon air. She pointed toward the diner door. Now. The angels herded them back inside like cowboys moving cattle. The bell above the door chimed, cheerful, inappropriate, a sound that belonged to a world where people didn't pour soup on disabled women for sport. Harper was still at her table. Jolene had taken over from Mabel, carefully cleaning the worst of the mess from Harper's hair and face. The older nurse's hands were gentle, practiced, the hands of someone who had spent decades caring for people in their worst moments. Harper's eyes were red, swollen. She stared at her trembling hands, unable to look up, unable to face the crowd that had watched her destruction and done nothing. The diner conversation stopped completely when the door opened. Every head turned, every eye locked onto the procession. 3 terrified young men, 5 grim-faced bikers, and an atmosphere so thick with tension you could have cut it with a butter knife. On your knees. Hank's voice carried through the silence. Clear, commanding, the voice of a man who expected to be obeyed. Brody hesitated. 1 second. 2. Ox's hand landed on his shoulder. The pressure was gentle at first, then not so gentle. Brody's knees buckled. He dropped to the floor like a puppet whose strings had been cut. The linoleum was cold and hard beneath him, unforgiving. Trent and Clay followed without resistance. 3 grown men kneeling in front of a disabled woman's wheelchair. 3 bullies brought low by their own cruelty. Harper looked up, startled, confused. Her blue eyes darted from the kneeling men to the leather-clad bikers and back again. She didn't understand, couldn't process what she was seeing. Hank crouched beside her chair. His voice softened completely. The ice melted from his eyes, replaced by something that looked almost like tenderness. Ma'am, my name is Hank. These 3 have something they need to say. He paused. You don't owe them forgiveness. You don't owe them anything. But they're going to apologize, and then we're going to make sure they face consequences. Harper's voice trembled. I don't understand. You don't have to. Just listen if you want. Or we can escort them out and call the police right now. Your choice. Harper looked at the kneeling men, really looked at them. Brody's face was pale. Trent's lips were moving in what might have been a silent prayer. Clay's tears had left tracks through the grime on his cheeks. Part of Harper wanted to scream at them, to unleash every ounce of pain and humiliation she'd ever felt, to make them understand what it was like to be her, to be disabled, to be different, to be treated like less than human by people who would never have to face consequences. Part of her wanted them gone, out of her sight, out of her life, out of existence entirely. Part of her wanted them to hurt the way she hurt, to feel the burning shame of being helpless while others watched and did nothing. But mostly she was tired, so very, very tired. Say what you need to say. Brody swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed like a fishing float in choppy water. I'm sorry. The words were mumbled, barely audible, directed at the floor rather than at Harper. Louder. Hank's command cut through the room like a whip crack. Look at her. She's a person, not the floor. Brody lifted his head. For the first time since the incident began, he actually looked at Harper, saw her tear-stained face, her trembling hands, the soup still dripping from her matted hair, the ruined dress that had probably been her favorite. Something in his expression cracked. The bravado fell away completely. What remained was raw, ugly, the face of a man confronting exactly who he had become. I'm sorry, his voice shook now. What I did was cruel, disgusting. You didn't deserve that. Nobody deserves that. I have no excuse. Trent cleared his throat. I'm sorry too. I should have stopped him. Should have been better. I just went along with it because I didn't want to seem weak. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. Clay couldn't meet Harper's eyes. His words came out in a rush, tumbling over each other. I'm sorry. I deleted the video. I swear I deleted it. From everything, all the platforms, it's gone. The clock on the wall ticked through the silence. Loud, intrusive, counting the seconds that stretched between Harper and the men who had humiliated her. When Harper finally spoke, her voice was stronger than she expected. Steadier. Something had shifted inside her. Something fundamental. Do you know what it's like? The 3 men looked up, confused, wary. Every single day I fight to do things you never think about. Getting dressed, making breakfast, going to the bathroom. Things that take you 5 minutes take me an hour. And I do it anyway, because I refuse to give up. Her voice gained strength with every word. Years of silence breaking like a dam that had finally reached its limit. Then I come out here and people stare. They pity me. They talk to me like I'm a child. They act like I'm stupid because my body doesn't work like yours. They treat me like I'm less than human. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but these were different tears, not tears of shame, tears of release. The disability isn't even the hardest part anymore. It's people like you, people who see someone struggling and think that's entertainment, people who can't see past a wheelchair to the actual human being sitting in it. Brody's face went the color of ash. Trent was openly crying now. Even Clay, who had seemed the most detached, looked like he might be sick, like he might be. I accept your apology. Harper's voice was clear now, strong, a voice she barely recognized as her own. Not because you deserve forgiveness, but because I deserve to let this go. I deserve peace. She paused, let the words sink in, but you need to change, really change. Not because you got caught, not because bikers scared you, because what you did was evil, and you need to be better. The words hung in the air like a verdict, like a judgment rendered by someone who had finally found the courage to speak. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. This was the moment everything changed for Harper Sinclair. Not the assault, not the humiliation. The moment she stopped being a victim and started being a survivor. The moment she found her voice after 5 years of silence. Hank stood, looked at the three kneeling men with something that might have been satisfaction, might have been contempt. Probably both. You heard her. Now here's what happens next. He pulled a folded paper from his vest pocket, laid it on the table beside Harper's ruined lunch. You're each writing a check for $500 to United Cerebral Palsy. Today. Right now. Credit cards work if you don't have cash. Brody started to protest. Hank silenced him with a look. That's not all. You're volunteering at Oakmont Disability Services every Saturday morning. 9 to noon, 12 weeks minimum. You're going to learn what it's actually like to live with a disability. You're going to look those kids in the eyes and remember what you did here today. We don't have time for that. Clay's protest was weak, pathetic, a last gasp of resistance. Make time. Willa stepped forward. Cancel your plans. Miss your parties. Grow up. Flint produced a clipboard from somewhere. Legal documents. Official looking. This is a contract. You sign it. You acknowledge what you did. You agree to make restitution. And if you fail to complete any term, we submit the video evidence to police and your employers. We also share it across every social media platform we can access. That's blackmail. Trent's voice cracked on the word. That's consequences, Ox said flatly. Something you should have learned a long time ago. Brody took the pen with shaking hands, hesitated. There's something else you should know. Hank's voice cut through the tension. Before you sign, everyone looked at him. I know you, Brody Lawson, know your history, know you're currently on probation for assault. The color drained from Brody's face. What you did here today is a parole violation. The video we recorded is evidence. The cops are going to see it either way. But if you sign this contract and complete every term, we'll tell the judge you took responsibility. Made amends might make a difference in sentencing. If you don't sign, Hank shrugged. Well, that's your choice. Brody signed without another word. His hand shook so badly the signature was barely legible. Trent signed, Clay signed. They provided phone numbers, addresses, employment information. Flint documented everything. Photos of IDs, copies of signatures, a paper trail that would follow them for years. One more thing. Hank's voice softened slightly. Mabel gets a $100 tip for having to witness your behavior in her establishment. Brody pulled out his wallet. His hands were still trembling. Trent and Clay added what they had. The crumpled bills piled up on the counter. More than $100, almost two. Mabel took the money with a strange expression. Gratitude mixed with disgust. She looked at the three young men like she was seeing them clearly for the first time. You boys aren't welcome back here. 6 months minimum. And only if Harper says it's okay. Harper looked up, surprised. Nobody had ever given her that kind of power before. That kind of consideration. Mabel squeezed her shoulder. This is a safe space, honey. Should have been from the start. I'm sorry I didn't step in sooner. It's not your fault. Maybe not, but I should have done better. We all should have. She looked at the three men with undisguised contempt. Now get out, and count yourselves lucky these folks showed more mercy than you deserved. Ox and Flint escorted them to the door. Through the window, Harper watched them climb into Brody's truck. They looked small now, defeated, the swagger completely gone, the laughter silenced. The truck pulled away, disappeared around the corner, and just like that, they were gone. But the story wasn't over, not by a long shot. Hank turned back to Harper. The scary intensity vanished from his face, replaced by genuine concern. The transformation was startling. One moment he'd been a force of nature. The next he was just a man, a father, someone who understood pain and wanted to ease it. How are you doing? Really, Harper didn't know. Her lunch was ruined. Her hair smelled like tomatoes. Her favorite dress was destroyed beyond any hope of salvage. But three men had apologized on their knees. They were being held accountable. And five complete strangers had stood up for her when nobody else would. I don't know, she admitted. I'm still processing. Jolene sat down beside him. Her nurse's hands continued their gentle work, cleaning the last traces of soup from Harper's neck and shoulders. That's okay, sweetheart. Take your time. We're not going anywhere. Why? The question burst out before Harper could stop it. Why did you help me? You don't know me. Hank pulled up a chair, sat down heavily. The leather of his vest creaked as he settled. My daughter Rosie has Down syndrome, he said simply. She's 15 years old, smartest kid I know, but people treat her like she's broken. His voice roughened, thick with emotion. I've watched people mock her, ignore her when she tries to talk, pat her head like she's instead of a person. Every time it happens, I want to tear the world apart. He met Harper's eyes directly. So when I see three grown men gang up on a disabled woman for fun, when I hear them laughing while she cries, yeah, it gets personal. Willa leaned against the wall nearby. My cousin uses a wheelchair. Car accident when he was 9. 22 now. I've watched him deal with this kind of thing his whole life. People talking over him, assuming he's mentally disabled because his legs don't work. It never gets easier. Stone spoke for the first time. The quiet member, the one who rarely said more than a few words. My uncle has cerebral palsy, like you. He's 58, retired accountant, married 3 kids. Normal guy who happens to have CP. People still treat him like he's tragic. Harper felt something loosening in her chest, a knot she hadn't even known was there. I thought I was alone. You're not, Jolene said firmly, not even close. Millions of people with disabilities. Millions more who love them. But it's easy to feel isolated when the world acts like you don't belong. Mabel brought fresh food, new soup, new sandwich. On the house, the gesture was small, insufficient. But Harper recognized it for what it was, an attempt to make amends, to restore what had been broken. I moved here 5 years ago, Harper heard herself saying. After my parents died, I thought a small town would be easier. Has it been, Hank asked? Sometimes. But I'm always the girl in the wheelchair, never just Harper. She paused, looked at these strangers who had become her defenders. And I'm so lonely. The admission came out barely above a whisper. I work from home, web design and data analysis. No friends here, no family anywhere. I come to this diner every Tuesday just to feel a part of the world, just to hear other people talking and laughing, just to feel less alone. Jolene's eyes softened with compassion. What do you like to do? Besides work, I write, Harper said. Or I try to. I've always wanted to write a book, but I don't know if I'm good enough. What kind of book? A memoir? Maybe. About living with cerebral palsy. The real stuff. Not the inspirational garbage people expect. You know what I mean. Disabled person does normal thing. So inspiring. She couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice, but the actual reality, the frustration, the isolation, the way people either pity you or treat you like you're invisible. That sounds powerful, Hank said. You should write it. Maybe. Someday. Not someday. Jolene was firm. Now. You have something important to say. The world needs to hear it. Harper didn't know how to respond to that. Didn't know how to process kindness from strangers after years of cruelty from the same. Do you like motorcycles? Hank asked suddenly. Harper blinked at the non sequitur. I've never been on one. Would you want to try? I don't know. Could I? With my legs, my balance, we'd figure it out. We've got members with all kinds of disabilities. One guy's a paraplegic, rides a modified trike. If you wanted to try, we'd make it work. Harper stared. Why would you do that? Because you deserve to have fun, Jolene said gently. Because you deserve friends. Because nobody should be as lonely as you just described. We have community dinners every Thursday, Willa added. 6 o'clock at the clubhouse. Nothing fancy, just food and people hanging out. Rosie's usually there. She'd love to meet you. Harper felt tears threatening again. Different tears this time. Tears of relief washing over her like rain after a long drought. You really mean that? We really mean it. Hank pulled a card from his vest, wrote something on the back. Clubhouse address, my cell number. You call if you need anything. Groceries, a ride somewhere, or if anyone gives you trouble. Anyone at all, Willa emphasized. You call us. We handle it. Harper took the card with trembling fingers. The paper was thick, expensive, the Hells Angels logo embossed on one side, Hank's blocky handwriting on the other. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet, Jolene suggested. Finish your lunch. Go home. Process everything that happened. Then decide. No pressure, but the invitation stands. They stayed while Harper ate. Hank told stories about Rosie, about how she'd taught herself piano by watching YouTube videos, about her book review channel that was slowly gaining followers, about her fierce determination to be seen as capable despite what the world expected. Willa talked about her work at the women's shelter, about the people she helped and the lives she'd seen transformed. Stone mentioned his mechanic shop. Ox described his volunteer work coaching Little League. Flint discussed his side business helping small businesses with their technology. They were just people, tattooed leather-wearing, motorcycle-riding people, but people nonetheless. They talked to Harper like she was one of them, like her disability was the least interesting thing about her. By the time Harper finished eating, some weight had lifted from her shoulders. The humiliation still stung. The memory would haunt her for months. But someone had stood up for her, without hesitation, without expectation. That meant something. When Harper wheeled toward the door, Mabel stopped her one last time. Those 5 times they're paying for. Consider it permanent. Your lunch is free here from now on. Mabel, you don't have to. I do. I should have stopped them the second they looked at you wrong. I didn't. So your lunch is free. And if anyone bothers you here again, you tell me immediately. Harper nodded, didn't trust her voice. Outside, the angels stood by their motorcycles. 5 machines gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. Chrome and leather and raw American power. Hank helped Harper navigate the ramp. His hands were surprisingly gentle for someone who had been so intimidating just an hour before. Jolene hugged her. Brief but warm. Thursday night, 6 o'clock. Think about it. I will. Harper watched them mount their bikes. Engines roared to life like thunder rolling across the Montana hills. Hank nodded at her. Willa saluted. Then they were moving, a formation of chrome and leather disappearing down Main Street. Harper sat on the sidewalk, the autumn sun warm on her face, her hair still damp, her dress still ruined. But something had changed. She pulled out Hank's card, read the address, his phone number. Her thumb traced the Hells Angels logo. Would she call? Would she show up Thursday night? Would she let these strange guardian angels into her life? She didn't know. Couldn't know. The future was uncertain. It always had been. But for the first time in years, Harper Sinclair had hope. She tucked the card into her pocket, started the slow journey home. Her wheelchair hummed along the familiar sidewalks, past the hardware store, past the library, past all the places where people had stared and whispered and treated her like something less than human. Today had been the worst day of her life, and somehow impossibly it had also been the best. Harper reached her apartment building just as her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Jolene. Hank gave me your number from the diner records. Just wanted to make sure you got home safe. Let us know if you need anything. Harper stared at the message. Read it twice. 3 times. Someone cared. Someone she barely knew. someone who had no reason to bother with her at all. She typed back with trembling fingers, "Home safe. Thank you for everything today." The response came almost immediately. That's what family does. Family. Harper hadn't had family in 5 years, had forgotten what the word even meant. Maybe it was time to remember. She wheeled into her apartment, closed the door, locked it. The familiar silence wrapped around her like a blanket. But tonight it felt different, less oppressive, less final. Harper pulled out her laptop, opened a blank document, stared at the cursor blinking against the white void. She had something to say. Someone had told her the world needed to hear it. Maybe they were right. Her fingers found the keys. The words started to flow. Chapter 1. The day everything changed. The soup burned, but what came after changed my life forever. The text message arrived at exactly 10:17 that night. Harper was sitting in her apartment, still wearing her ruined dress because she hadn't found the energy to change. The laptop glowed on her kitchen table. 3 paragraphs of her memoir stared back at her. 3 paragraphs that had taken 4 hours to write. 3 paragraphs that felt like pulling teeth from her own skull. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She should have ignored it, should have let it go to voicemail. Should have done anything except tap that green button and read the words that would haunt her for weeks. "Nice friends you got. Hell's Angels, huh? My little brother Brody says hi from county lockup. He's real sorry about the soup. But you know what? I'm not sorry. Not even a little bit. Those bikers can't protect you forever. Eventually you'll be alone. And when you are, I'm coming for you." Harper's hands went numb. The phone slipped from her fingers, clattered against the table. The screen stayed lit. The words stayed visible. Mocking her. Threatening her. Damon Lawson, Brody's older brother, 29 years old. The one the town whispered about. The one even Brody seemed scared of. Harper had heard stories. Everyone in Millbrook had heard stories. Damon had done time. 3 years in state prison for aggravated assault. Beat a man so badly the victim spent 6 months learning to walk again. Got out 18 months ago. Hadn't changed a bit. And now he was coming for her. Harper's breath came short, fast. The walls of her tiny apartment seemed to close in. The locks on her door seemed flimsy. Pathetic. Like they could stave a determined man for about 30 seconds. She grabbed her phone, scrolled through contacts with trembling fingers, found Hank's number, the one he'd written on the back of that card just hours ago. The phone rang once, twice. Harper, Hank's voice was alert despite the late hour. "What's wrong?" She couldn't speak, could barely breathe, just held the phone to her ear while her whole body shook. "Harper, talk to me. What happened?" She read him the message. Her voice broke 3 times. By the end, she was crying. Again. Always crying, always weak, always the victim. "Stay put." Hank's voice was ice cold. "Lock your doors. Don't answer for anyone except me or one of my people. Willa's on her way. She'll be there in 10 minutes. What if he comes before then? He won't. Damon's a coward. Cowards make threats. They don't act on them. Not when there might be witnesses. Not when the target is alert. How do you know? Because I've dealt with men like him my whole life." Hank paused. "Trust me, Harper. You're going to be okay." The line went dead. Harper sat in the darkness, listening to every sound, every creak of the old building, every car passing on the street below, every footstep in the hallway that might be a neighbor, or might be someone coming to finish what Brody started. 9 minutes and 43 seconds later, she heard the rumble of a motorcycle. Looked out her window, saw Willa's bike pull up under the streetlight across from her building. Willa didn't come to the door, didn't announce herself, just parked her motorcycle where Harper could see her, pulled out her phone, started scrolling. Casual as anything, like sitting outside a stranger's apartment at 10:30 at night was perfectly normal. Harper's phone buzzed. "Willa, I'm here. Get some sleep. Nobody's getting past me tonight." Harper stared at the message, at the woman in leather sitting vigil outside her window, at the motorcycle gleaming under the streetlight like a steel guardian. She didn't sleep much that night, but knowing Willa was out there made the darkness less suffocating, made the threats feel less immediate, made her feel less alone. The next morning brought change. Hank arrived at 8. Jolene came with him. They sat in Harper's tiny kitchen and laid out the situation with brutal honesty. "Damon's dangerous," Hank said. "More dangerous than Brody. He's got a record. He's got connections, and he's got a grudge. What do I do? You come stay at the clubhouse, just for a few days, until we figure out what Damon's planning. Harper looked around her apartment, the apartment she'd lived in for 5 years, the apartment that had become both prison and sanctuary, the apartment where she'd hidden from a world that didn't want her. I can't just leave. Why not? Jolene asked gently. What's keeping you here? Harper opened her mouth, closed it, realized she didn't have an answer. This is my home. Home is where family is, Hank said. And right now your family is at the clubhouse. Come stay with us. We've got a guest room, accessible bathroom, everything you need. Harper's throat tightened. She'd known these people for less than 24 hours, but they were offering her more than anyone had offered in 5 years. Okay, the word came out small, uncertain. Okay, I'll come. They helped her pack. Not much. A few days' worth of clothes, her medication, her laptop, her worn copy of Persuasion, the essentials of a life that fit into 2 bags. The clubhouse sat on the edge of town. Part warehouse, part garage, part home. A sprawling compound surrounded by chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. Not exactly welcoming, but then it wasn't meant to be. Motorcycles lined the front, dozens of them, chrome gleaming in the morning sun. American steel and American power and American freedom. Hank helped Harper up the ramp. The main room was huge, pool table in one corner, bar along one wall, couches and chairs scattered around in comfortable clusters, photos covering every surface, generations of hellsangels staring down from frames that had seen better days. It was loud. It was chaotic. It was nothing like Harper's quiet apartment. It was perfect. A blur of motion caught Harper's eye. A teenage girl running toward her at full speed, dark hair flying, bright eyes shining. You're Harper. The girl skidded to a stop inches from the wheelchair. Dad told me about you. I'm Rosie. Do you like books? What's your favorite? Mine's Pride and Prejudice. But I also really love Jane Eyre and anything by the Brontes, really. And have you read Persuasion? Because Captain Wentworth's letter is literally the most romantic thing ever written, and I could talk about it for hours. Harper blinked, tried to process the avalanche of words, found herself smiling despite everything. Rosie, breathe. Jolene laughed, walking over. Give the poor woman a chance to settle in. Rosie was 15. Down syndrome was obvious in her features, but so was her intelligence, her personality, her absolute refusal to be defined by anyone's expectations. Sorry, Rosie said, not looking sorry at all. I just get excited about books. Nobody at school reads like I do. They think I can't understand real literature because of how I look. I love books too, Harper said. Persuasion is one of my favorites. Rosie's face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. Really? Oh my gosh, we have so much to talk about. Have you read Northanger Abbey? It's underrated, but it's so funny. And what about Villette? Charlotte Bronte doesn't get enough credit for that one. Rosie. Hank appeared from a back room. Harper just got here. Let her catch her breath. Okay, Dad. Rosie bounced on her heels. But later we're talking about Captain Wentworth's letter. It's the most romantic thing ever written, and I will defend that opinion to my death. She skipped off to bother Willa, who was working on a motorcycle in the garage area. Hank watched her go with a mixture of pride and amusement. Sorry about that. She gets excited. Don't apologize, Harper said. She's wonderful. She is. Hank's voice softened. She's also the reason I do what I do. The reason we all do what we do. He showed Harper to the guest room. Small but clean. Accessible bathroom attached. A window overlooking the compound's back lot. It's not fancy, Hank said. But it's safe. Nobody gets in here without us knowing. It's perfect. Harper meant it. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of new experiences. Rosie became her constant companion. The 15-year-old had an opinion about everything and no filter to prevent those opinions from spilling out at every opportunity. She showed Harper her YouTube channel, 300 subscribers and growing. Book reviews delivered with the enthusiasm of a preacher and the insight of a scholar. You should be in one of my videos, Rosie said on the third day. We could do a joint review of Persuasion. My subscribers would love it. I don't know, Harper said. I've never been on camera. Neither had I before I started. Rosie shrugged. Then I decided I had something to say, and nobody was going to stop me from saying it. You have something to say, too. I can tell. Harper thought about her memoir, the 3 paragraphs that had grown to 3 pages, the words that were finally starting to flow. Maybe, she said. Let me think about it. Jolene took Harper shopping on the 4th day. First stop was a salon, a place called Rita's that Jolene had been going to for 20 years. Rita didn't stare at the wheelchair, didn't talk to Jolene instead of Harper, treated her like any other customer. What are we doing today? Rita asked, running her fingers through Harper's blonde hair. This is beautiful, natural color. Lucky girl. I don't know, Harper admitted. I haven't really thought about my appearance in a long time. Then let's change that, Rita smiled. I'm thinking we clean up the ends, add some layers for volume, maybe some highlights to brighten things up. What do you think? Harper looked at herself in the mirror. Really looked, saw the woman she'd become. Tired, defeated, invisible. That sounds perfect. 2 hours later, she barely recognized herself. Her hair was styled, layered, lighter. She looked alive, not like the ghost who'd been staring back from mirrors for 5 years. Beautiful, Rita declared. You've got great bone structure. Don't hide it. In the car afterward, Jolene glanced over. Feel good different, Harper said. Good different. They stopped for lunch at a cafe, not the Rosewood Diner, somewhere new. Jolene insisted Harper try the lobster roll. I've never had lobster, Harper admitted. What? That's criminal. You're trying it. My treat. The lobster roll was amazing. Harper ate the whole thing, licked butter from her fingers like a child. Didn't care who was watching. So, Jolene said, wiping her own fingers. Thursday night, 6 o'clock at the clubhouse. Rosie's been counting down the hours. I'll be there, Harper said, then realized she hadn't even hesitated. That night alone in the guest room, Harper opened her laptop. The memoir had grown to 15 pages. The words came easier now, faster, like a dam had broken and everything she'd been holding back for 5 years was finally pouring out. She wrote about the diner, about the soup, about the laughter that had cut deeper than any physical wound. She wrote about Hank and Jolene and the angels who had stood up when everyone else sat still. She wrote until her eyes burned, until her fingers cramped, until the story was out of her and onto the page. Chapter 5. Finding family in unexpected places. I used to think family was blood, the people you were born to, the people who raised you, the people who deedballed and left you alone in a world that didn't want you. I was wrong. Family is the people who choose you, the people who stand up when everyone else sits down, the people who see past the wheelchair to the person sitting in it. Harper saved the document, closed her laptop, let the tears of release fall freely. The phone call came on the 6th night, 2:17 in the morning. Harper's phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. Again. She almost didn't answer. Almost let it go to voicemail. Almost chose the safe path she'd been choosing for 5 years. But something had changed. Something inviting her had shifted. She wasn't the same woman who'd sat frozen in that diner. Wasn't the same woman who'd begged 3 bullies to leave her alone. She answered, "Is this Harper Sinclair?" The voice was female, older, rough from years of cigarettes and harder things. Who is this Charlene Lawson, Brody's mother? Harper's grip tightened on the phone. She should hang up. Should tell this woman to never contact her again. Should protect herself from whatever manipulation was coming. But she didn't. I'm not calling to threaten you, Charlene continued. I'm not calling to make excuses. I'm calling to apologize. Harper waited, said nothing. I know what my son did to you. I saw the video before it got taken down. I've been sick about it for days. Charlene's voice cracked. I raised him better than that. I thought I did anyway. Mrs. Lawson, please let me finish. Harper fell silent. Brody's father left when the boys were young, Charlene said. I worked 3 jobs trying to keep them fed and housed. I wasn't around much. Damon raised Brody more than I did. And Damon, she trailed off. Damon's got a mean streak, always has. He made Brody tough. Made him think being cruel was the same as being strong. Harper's throat tightened. She didn't want to feel sympathy for Brody. Didn't want his mother's pain to complicate her anger. I visited Brody in county today, Charlene continued. He's a mess, crying, saying he deserves to be there, saying he understands now what he did to you. Good, Harper said flatly. He does deserve it. I know. I know he does. But there's something else. Something I need you to understand. Not to excuse what he did. Nothing excuses that. But maybe to explain it. Harper's stomach dropped. What are you talking about? Silence stretched across the line. Heavy, loaded. The silence of someone about to reveal something they'd kept buried for years. Brody had a younger brother, Charlene finally said. His name was Nicky. He had autism. Beautiful boy, smart as a whip, but he struggled with social things. Kids were brutal to him. Harper closed her eyes. She knew where this was going. Knew it the way you know a storm is coming before the first drops fall. Brody was supposed to watch him at the park one day. He was 15. Nicky was 12. Some older kids started picking on Nicky, calling him names, throwing things at him. Charlene's voice broke completely. Brody joined in, Harper's breath caught coil. He was embarrassed. Wanted the older kids to think he was cool. So he laughed at his own brother, called him names, told him he was a freak who nobody wanted. Oh, God. Nicky ran home crying. Brody came back hours later like nothing happened. I didn't know, not until 3 days later when Nicky tried to hurt himself. The words hung in the darkness, heavy as stones. He was 12 years old and he tried to hang himself in our garage. Because even his own brother hated him. Harper couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only listen as this woman's grief poured through the phone like blood from an open wound. We got him down in time, got him help, therapy, medication. He got better. We thought he got better. Then 2 years later, right after his 14th birthday, Nicky did it again. Charlene's voice went flat, empty. The voice of someone who had cried so many tears there were none left. This time we didn't find him in time. Harper felt her own tears fall, silent, unstoppable. Brody never forgave himself. He blamed everyone. Me for working too much, his dad for leaving, the kids at school for being cruel. But mostly he blamed himself. And instead of dealing with that guilt, he became the thing that killed his brother. He became a bully. Why are you telling me this? Because Brody asked me to. He's in county right now, finally facing what he did, what he's been doing. He wanted you to know he's sorry, not just for the soup, for everything, for all the people he's hurt trying to run from his own guilt. Harper wiped her eyes. Is this supposed to make me forgive him? No, Charlene said firmly. It's not. You don't owe him forgiveness. You don't owe him anything. I'm telling you because you deserve to know that what he did wasn't about you. It was about him, about his pain, about his guilt, about his inability to face what he did to his own brother. She paused. Hurt people hurt people. That doesn't excuse it, doesn't make it okay, but maybe it explains it. And maybe understanding that will help you heal. Harper sat in the darkness for a long moment, processing, trying to make sense of everything she just heard. Mrs. Lawson. Yes, understanding isn't the same as forgiving. His pain doesn't erase mine. His guilt doesn't fix what he did to me. I know, but thank you for telling me, for helping me understand. She paused. I hope Brody finds peace. I hope he gets the help he needs. But I can't be the one to give him that peace. I have to focus on my own healing. Charlene's voice was thick with tears. I understand. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself, Harper. The line went dead. Harper sat in the darkness, phone clutched in her hand, mind spinning. Nicky, a boy with autism who killed himself because even his own brother turned against him. Brody, a teenager so desperate for acceptance that he destroyed the person who loved him most. A family shattered by cruelty and guilt and the terrible price of belonging. Harper understood trauma, understood how pain could twist people into versions of themselves they never meant to be. She'd spent 5 years becoming a ghost. Brody had spent 8 years becoming a monster. Neither of them had dealt with their damage. Neither of them had faced the darkness inside. But understanding wasn't forgiving. Couldn't be. Wouldn't be. Harper lay back down, stared at the ceiling, let the weight of the night settle over her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new revelations, new tests of the strength she was only beginning to discover. But tonight she would rest. Tonight she would process. Tonight she would let herself feel everything without trying to control it. The seventh day brought news. Bad news. Hank's face was grim when he sat across from Harper at the clubhouse's long dining table. We need to talk. About Damon. What about him? He made bail yesterday. Someone put up his mother's house as collateral. Harper's blood went cold. He's out. Was out, past tense. He cut his ankle monitor at 6 this morning. Disappeared. Nobody knows where he is. The world tilted. Harper gripped the table to steady herself. There's more. Hank continued, his voice heavy. He went to his mother's house before he vanished. Took a gun, a .45 his father left behind years ago. He has a gun. Yes. And he's coming for me. We don't know that for certain, but we're not taking chances. Harper's phone buzzed. She looked down. Unknown number, new message. I'm patient. I can wait. And when I come for you, nobody will see it coming. Not the bikers, not the cops, not anyone. You're going to pay for what happened to my brother. Both of them. Harper showed Hank the message. His face went hard as granite. Flint! He called across the room. Trace this. Now, Flint appeared with his laptop. Took Harper's phone, started working. The hours that followed were a blur of activity. Phone calls to police, meetings with club members, security protocols being implemented. Harper sat in the middle of it all, feeling like the eye of a hurricane she had somehow created. Flint traced the message to a burner phone, purchased with Guam 2 towns over. No way to track further. Detective Morrison stopped by. The same cop Hank had mentioned at the diner, the one whose nephew used a wheelchair. He took Harper's statement with professional efficiency and personal concern. We've got alerts out on Damon, he said. Every patrol car in the county has his photo. He can't stay hidden forever. But he could stay hidden long enough. They all knew it. Nobody said it. On the 9th day, more news came. Worse news. Damon had been spotted, 3 miles from town, driving a stolen car, armed. Police pursued. Damon fled. The chase ended when Damon crashed the stolen vehicle into a ditch and escaped on foot into the woods. He's close, Hank said during the emergency meeting. Too close. We're on lockdown until further notice. Nobody leaves the compound alone. Nobody goes anywhere without checking in. Harper listened from the corner. Watched these people she barely knew prepare to defend her with their lives. The guilt became unbearable. That night, she sat at the window of the guest room, watching the compound. Guards patrolled the perimeter. Cameras recorded every angle. The Hells Angels had turned their clubhouse into a fortress. All for her. All because she'd gone to lunch on a Tuesday and ordered tomato soup. Rosie found her there at midnight, knocked softly, came in without waiting for an answer. Can't sleep either, the 15-year-old asked. No, me neither. I keep thinking about that man, about what he might do. You shouldn't have to think about that, Harper said. You're 15. You should be worrying about school and books and normal teenage things. Rosie sat on the edge of the bed. Normal is overrated. Normal people watched you get hurt and did nothing. Normal people made fun of me my whole life because I looked different. Normal is just another word for coward. Harper stared at this remarkable girl. Where did you get so wise? Books. Rosie smiled. And my parents. They taught me that being different isn't weakness. It's power. It's seeing the world from an angle that normal people can't access. Your parents are amazing, I know. Rosie leaned against Harper's shoulder. So are you. You survived something terrible and you're still here. Still fighting. That's not normal. That's extraordinary. Harper put her arm around Rosie. 2 girls, 2 disabilities. 2 people the world had tried to diminish and dismiss. Together they watched the guards patrol. Together they waited for dawn. The 10th day brought the confrontation Harper had been dreading. She'd been thinking about leaving, about slipping away in the night to draw Damon's attention away from the people who had become her family. The guilt of putting them in danger gnawed at her constantly. But Jolene found her packing at 4 in the morning. Going somewhere, Harper froze, turned slowly. Jolene stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sharp. I have to leave, Harper said. I'm putting everyone in danger. So you're going to wheel out into the night alone with an armed man hunting you. That's your plan. It's better than getting someone killed. Better for who Jolene walked closer. Not for Rosie. She'd be devastated. Not for Hank. He'd blame himself forever. Not for me. I've already lost people I love to violence. I'm not losing another one. You barely know me. I know enough. Jolene's voice softened. I know you're scared. I know you feel guilty. I know you think running will solve something. But it won't. Running never solves anything. It just delays the inevitable. What am I supposed to do? Harper's voice broke. Just sit here and wait for him to come. Wait for someone to get hurt, protecting me, yes. Jolene took her hands. That's exactly what you do. You let people help you. You let family protect you. You trust that we know what we're doing and we're doing it because we choose to. The back door opened. Hank stood there, face grim, eyes knowing. Was wondering when you'd try this. He said, you figured it was coming. That guilt you're carrying. The way you've been looking at everyone like you're memorizing our faces. Classic signs of someone planning to run. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Hank walked forward. Be present. Be here. Let us do what we do. He put his hand on Harper's shoulder. You've been running your whole life, haven't you? Running from pain, running from fear, running from a world that made you feel like you didn't belong. Harper nodded. Couldn't speak. Running ends tonight. You're part of this family now. Family doesn't run from each other. Family stands together, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. What if someone gets hurt? Then we deal with it. Together. That's what family does. Harper looked at these two people. This man who reminded her of the father she'd lost. This woman who reminded her of the mother she missed. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll stay. Good. Hank squeezed her shoulder. Now get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. He was right about that. The call came at 6:17 the next morning. Flint burst into the main room where everyone had gathered for breakfast. Face pale, eyes wide. They found him. Police located Damon at a motel on Highway 42. SWAT's moving in now. The clubhouse erupted. People grabbing phones, turning on scanners, pulling up live feeds. Flint had hacked into the police frequency. They gathered around his laptop, listening in real time as the situation unfolded. Suspect is barricaded in room 17, claiming to have a hostage, demanding to speak with Harper Sinclair. Harper's blood turned to ice. He's lying, Hank said immediately. It's a stall tactic, trying to buy time. They listened to SWAT negotiate. Damon's voice came through distorted, but clear enough. I want to talk to Harper. Bring her here and I'll surrender. That's the only way this ends without blood. Absolutely not, Jolene said. That's exactly what he wants. Harper's mind raced. What if she could end this? What if talking to him was the answer? What if her voice was the only thing that could prevent bloodshed? No, Hank's voice cut through her thoughts. I know what you're thinking. The answer is no. What if it works? It won't work. He wants you in range, wants to use you as his shield. This is textbook manipulation. The standoff continued for hours. Damon kept demanding Harper. Police kept refusing. Negotiators tried every technique in the book. Nothing worked. Then a new voice came over the scanner. Female, familiar. Damon, this is your mother. I'm here with the police. Please, baby, put the gun down. Come out. Don't make this worse. Silence, then Damon's voice. Quieter now, younger somehow, like the man had briefly become the boy. Mom, I'm here, baby. Please, for me, for Brody. Don't do this. They took Brody from me. They put him in jail. Brody put himself in jail. Charlene's voice was steady despite the tears audible in every word. He did something wrong and he's facing the consequences. That's how the world works. That's how it should work, but she did this. That woman in the wheelchair. She ruined everything. No baby. She didn't. You and Brody did this to yourselves. And I did this by protecting you too long. By making excuses. By not teaching you that actions have consequences. Silence again. Longer this time. Everyone in the clubhouse held their breath. Mom, I'm scared. I know, baby. I'm scared too. But the only way out of this is through. Put the gun down. Come outside. Let's end this before someone gets hurt. More silence. An eternity compressed into seconds. Then the scanner crackled. Suspect is exiting the room. Hands up. Gun on the ground. Officers moving in. The clubhouse exhaled. 30 people releasing 30 held breaths in perfect unison. We have the suspect in custody. No shots fired. Hostage claim was false. Scene is secure. It was over. Damon was in handcuffs. No one was hurt. The nightmare had ended. Harper sat in her wheelchair, stunned, shaking, unable to process what had just happened. Jolene knelt beside her. "It's done. You're safe." "His mother," Harper whispered. She stopped him. "Yes." Jolene nodded. She chose justice over blood. That's the hardest choice a parent can make. Harper thought about Charlene, about the woman who had lost one son to suicide and was now watching another go to prison, about the impossible weight of loving someone who had become a monster. "Is it wrong that I feel sorry for her?" "No." Jolene squeezed her hand. "Compassion is never wrong, even for people who've hurt us, especially for them." The rest of the day passed in a blur. Phone calls confirming Damon's arrest, updates from Detective Morrison about charges, relief spreading through the clubhouse like warmth from a fire. Damon faced a list of crimes as long as Harper's arm: bail jumping, possession of a firearm by a felon, making terroristic threats, stalking. The district attorney was talking 15 to 20 years minimum. It was over. Really over. That night, Harper sat on the clubhouse porch, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in shades of orange and gold, feeling something she hadn't felt in years: peace. Hank sat down beside her, said nothing for a long moment. "You okay?" "I think so. For the first time in a long while, I think I actually am." "Good." He leaned back. "What's next for you?" Harper thought about it, really thought. "I'm going to finish my book. I'm going to tell my story, and I'm going to help other people like me feel less alone." That sounds like a plan. Harper looked at this man, this stranger who had become family, this guardian angel in leather and denim. "Thank you for everything. That's what family does." Hank smiled. "Now come inside. Rosie's been driving everyone crazy waiting to celebrate with you. Something about a book club and Captain Wentworth's letter." Harper laughed, actually laughed. The sound surprised her, light and free and full of something she'd almost forgotten existed: hope. She followed Hank inside, into the warmth, into the noise, into the chaos of the family she'd never expected to find. The nightmare was over. But her story was just beginning. 2 months later, Harper stood in front of her bathroom mirror and practiced her speech for the 15th time. "My name is Harper Sinclair, and 2 months ago, 3 men dumped soup on my head because I'm disabled and they thought it would be funny." Her voice cracked on the word funny. She stopped, took a breath, started over. "My name is Harper Sinclair, and 2 months ago, 3 men dumped soup on my head because I'm disabled and they thought it would be funny." Better, more confident, less like a woman about to shatter into 1,000 pieces. The Disability Rights Conference was in 6 hours. 200 people would be sitting in that audience. Advocates, activists, family members of disabled individuals, politicians, media representatives, all of them waiting to hear what Harper Sinclair had to say about living with cerebral palsy in a world that treated disability as tragedy instead of just another way of being human. Harper's hand shook. Not from the cerebral palsy this time, from pure, undiluted terror. Her phone rang. Jolene's name flashed across the screen. "Morning, honey. How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Harper admitted. "I don't know if I can do this." "Good. That means you care. We're picking you up in 30 minutes. Wear the blue blouse. It looks great on you." "Jolene, you're going to be amazing. See you soon." The line went dead before Harper could argue. She stared at her closet, pulled out the blue blouse, the one Jolene had helped her pick out during that shopping trip weeks ago, the one that made her feel almost beautiful, almost normal, almost like the woman she might have been if the world had been kinder. She was still buttoning it when another call came. Unknown number. Harper's stomach dropped for half a second before she remembered. Damon was in prison, Brody was in county, there was no threat anymore. The monsters were caged, she answered. "Hello, Harper Sinclair?" A professional voice. Male. Unfamiliar. "Yes." "Who is this?" "This is David Crawford from Northgate Publishing. We spoke briefly last week about your memoir proposal." Harper's heart stuttered. She'd sent queries to a dozen publishers after finishing her manuscript. Hadn't expected responses for months. Certainly hadn't expected a phone call. "Yes, I remember. I've finished reading your sample chapters." Crawford's voice warmed. "Harper, this is extraordinary work. Raw and honest and powerful. We'd like to discuss offering you a book deal." Harper sat down hard on the edge of her bed. A book deal. An actual book deal. I'm actually speaking at a conference today, she managed. Can we talk tomorrow? Of course, but I wanted you to know before you go on that stage. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And we want to help you share it with the world. After she hung up, Harper sat stunned. The memoir she'd started writing the night of the attack. The story that had poured out of her across months of healing. Someone wanted to publish it. Someone thought it mattered. She looked at herself in the mirror. Really looked. The woman staring back wasn't the ghost who'd haunted her reflection for 5 years. This woman had color in her cheeks, fire in her eyes, a story worth telling, and the courage to tell it. Harper finished buttoning her blouse, checked her hair one last time, grabbed her chin. It was time. The drive to the convention center took 40 minutes. Hank drove the truck. Jolene sat beside him. Rosie bounced in the back seat next to Harper, talking nonstop about how exciting this was going to be. I told all my YouTube subscribers about you, Rosie said. 1,200 of them now. They're going to watch the live stream. I promised them you'd be amazing. No pressure, Harper said weakly. Rosie grinned. Pressure is how decisions are made. The convention center was massive. Harper's wheelchair felt very small as they approached the entrance, very insignificant against the towering glass and steel. Inside was chaos. Organized chaos, but chaos nonetheless. Booths and displays lined the main hall. People in suits and people in t-shirts mingled together. Wheelchairs and walkers and service dogs navigated through the crowd. Signs proclaimed messages of inclusion and accessibility and rights. Harper's people, her tribe, the community she'd been hiding from for 5 years. A coordinator found them almost immediately. Miss Sinclair, we've been expecting you. You're in the speaker waiting room, this way. The waiting room was quieter. A dozen other speakers sat around looking equally nervous. Harper recognized some of them from research she'd done. A Paralympic athlete, a deaf actress, a blind entrepreneur. All of them had stories. All of them were here to share their truths. Harper felt less alone. The coordinator ran through logistics, speaking order, time limits, microphone placement. Harper absorbed maybe half of it. Her mind kept drifting to the 200 people waiting in the auditorium. 200 faces that would be watching her, judging her, deciding whether her story was worth hearing. 5 minutes, the coordinator said finally. You're after Dr. Martinez. Someone will come get you. Harper nodded, couldn't speak. Her throat had closed completely. Rosie appeared beside her wheelchair. The 15-year-old had somehow gotten past security, somehow found her way backstage, somehow sensed that Harper needed her. You look scared, Rosie said. I am scared. Good. That means you're about to do something brave. Harper looked at this remarkable girl, this child with Down syndrome who had been dismissed and underestimated her entire life. This fierce soul who refused to be defined by anyone's expectations. What if I forget what I'm supposed to say? What if I freeze? What if I make a fool of myself in front of everyone? Then you'll recover, Rosie said simply. You'll take a breath and find your words and keep going. That's what brave people do. They mess up and they keep going anyway. How do you know? Because that's what I do every day. Rosie sat down beside Harper's wheelchair. Every time I raise my hand in class and people expect me to say something stupid, every time I post a video and wait for the mean comments, every time I exist in a world that thinks I shouldn't, I mess up. I keep going. Harper felt tears of gratitude threatening. Rosie took Harper's hand. Now it's your turn. You go out there and tell those people what it's like. The real stuff, the hard stuff, the stuff that normal people don't want to hear. And you don't apologize for any of it. Harper squeezed Rosie's hand. What would I do without you? Probably read inferior literary criticism. Rosie grinned. Now go be amazing. I'll be in the front row cheering so loud they'll have to ask me to leave. A staff member appeared. Miss Sinclair. You're on. Harper wheeled toward the stage entrance, paused, looked back at Rosie one more time. The 15-year-old gave her a thumbs up. Bright eyes shining, absolute faith radiating from every pore. Harper turned forward, rolled onto the stage. The lights were blinding. The audience was enormous. 200 people, maybe more, all staring at her, all waiting to hear what she had to say. Harper approached the microphone. Her hands trembled on the wheels of her chair. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to disappear back into the comfortable invisibility she'd cultivated for 5 years. Instead, she spoke. "My name is Harper Sinclair. 2 months ago, 3 men dumped soup on my head in a public diner because I'm disabled, and they thought it would be funny." The audience went still. Every eye locked onto Harper, every ear tuned to her frequency. I sat there covered in tomato soup and humiliation while dozens of people watched. Not one of them helped. Not one of them spoke up. Not one of them treated me like a human being worth defending. Harper paused. Let that sink in. Then 5 members of a motorcycle club decided enough was enough. They confronted my attackers, made them apologize on their knees, made them face consequences. They didn't have to do that. They barely knew me, but they did it anyway because they understood something important. She looked at the crowd, picked out Hank and Jolene in the third row, Rosie beside them practically vibrating with excitement. Disability isn't the problem. The way the world treats disabled people is the problem. Her voice grew stronger, steadier. All those years of silence finally finding release. I have cerebral palsy. I've had it my entire life. It affects how I move, how I navigate spaces, how people perceive me. But it doesn't define me. It doesn't make me tragic. It doesn't make me inspiring just for existing. Harper's jaw set. It just makes me disabled. And that's okay. She saw people nodding, some wiping their eyes, others leaning forward in their seats. The world tells disabled people we should be grateful for basic decency, that we should be quiet and polite and not make anyone uncomfortable, that if we're treated badly, it's somehow our fault for being disabled in public. Her voice rang out clear and strong. I'm done with that. I'm done being quiet. I'm done accepting crumbs of accessibility and calling it progress. I'm done letting people pity me instead of respecting me. Harper straightened in her wheelchair. For the first time in her life, she felt powerful. Not despite the chair, because of it. Because of everything she'd survived, everything she'd overcome, everything she'd become. I deserve to eat lunch in a diner without being assaulted. I deserve to exist in public spaces without being stared at or mocked or ignored. I deserve basic human dignity. She paused. We all do. The audience sat in perfect silence. Harper couldn't tell if she'd gone too far, couldn't read the energy in the room, could only feel her own heart pounding and her own truth ringing in her ears. And if you don't understand that, if you think disabled people should just be grateful for whatever scraps of respect we get, then you're part of the problem. More silence. Endless, terrible silence. Then someone started clapping. One person, then another, then 10, then 50. Then the entire room erupted in applause. 200 people rose to their feet, a standing ovation for the woman in the wheelchair who had finally found the courage to speak. Harper felt tears of triumph streaming down her face. Didn't try to stop them. These were the tears she'd earned, the tears of release and recognition and redemption. She finished her speech, answered questions from the audience, told the full story of what happened at the diner and what happened after. Talked about finding a family in unexpected places, about the hellsangels who had become her guardian angels, about a 15-year-old girl with Down syndrome who had taught her that joy was possible even when the world tried to beat it out of you. When she finally wheeled off stage, Jolene was waiting with a hug that nearly knocked her out of her chair. You were incredible. Absolutely incredible. Rosie bounced up beside them. That was amazing. You made like 3 people cry. I counted. Actually, it was more like 30, but I stopped counting after 3 because I was too busy cheering. Hank stood back, arms crossed. But Harper could see the pride in his eyes, the satisfaction of watching someone he cared about triumph. Well done, he said simply, the highest praise he ever gave. The rest of the conference was a blur. People approaching Harper, shaking her hand, sharing their own stories, thanking her for saying what they'd always felt but never had the courage to voice. A woman with a prosthetic leg told Harper about the job interviews where employers looked at her leg instead of her resume. A father of a child with autism talked about the birthday parties his son was never invited to. A grandmother in a wheelchair described being talked over by doctors who addressed her questions to her adult children instead of to her. Story after story, pain after pain, a cascade of shared experience that made Harper feel simultaneously heartbroken and hopeful. These were her people. This was her community, and she had finally found the courage to stand up and be counted among them. A woman in a business suit approached as the conference wound down. Professional, polished, clearly someone important. Miss Sinclair, I'm Margaret Wells from the National Disability Rights Network. Your speech was extraordinary. We'd like to talk to you about joining our Speakers Bureau. We send advocates to schools, corporations, government agencies. We think your voice could make a real difference. Harper stared at her. A Speakers Bureau, professional advocacy, using her story to change minds and policies and lives. I'd be honored, Harper said. Let's talk. They exchanged cards, made plans to meet the following week. Another door opening, another possibility appearing. By the time they left the convention center, Harper was exhausted. The good kind of exhaustion. The kind that came from pouring everything you had into something that mattered. The drive home was quiet. Rosie had fallen asleep against Harper's shoulder. Jolene watched the road. Hank drove steady and sure through the Montana twilight. Harper looked out the window, watched the landscape roll past, thought about everything that had happened, everything that had changed. 2 months ago, she'd been invisible, a ghost haunting a small town that didn't want her, a woman who'd given up on connection, on community, on hope. Now she had a family, a voice, a purpose. Now she had a future. The email arrived 3 days later. Harper was sitting in the clubhouse common room working on revisions to her manuscript. The publisher had sent detailed notes. Most of it was positive. Some of it required significant rewrites. All of it felt surreal. Her laptop chimed. New message. Unknown sender. Harper almost deleted it. She'd been getting strange emails since the conference video went viral. 50,000 views in the first week. 100,000 by the second. Most of the responses were supportive. Some were hateful. All of them were overwhelming. But something made her click on this one. The sender's name was Trent Holloway. Harper's breath caught. Trent, the second bully. The one who had ground her sandwich into her lap while Brody poured the soup. The one who had signed the contract and slunk away with his tail between his legs. She opened the email. Dear Harper, I know I shouldn't contact you. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. But I needed to write this. Needed you to know what's happened since that day in the diner. I finished my volunteer hours at the Oakmont Disability Center 3 weeks ago. 144 hours. Every Saturday for 12 weeks. I thought it would be punishment. I thought I would hate every minute of it. I was wrong. Those kids, Harper, they're just kids. Smart and funny and full of life. They have dreams and fears and favorite books and silly jokes that make no sense but crack them up anyway. They're not broken. They're not tragic. They're just people who happen to need some extra help sometimes. And I realized something while I was there. What we did to you wasn't just cruel. It was evil. We looked at another human being and saw nothing but a target. We saw your wheelchair and your disability, and we thought that made you less than us. That made you fair game. We were monsters. I was a monster. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, and I'm not expecting it. But I wanted you to know that something changed in me during those 144 hours. Something fundamental. I enrolled in community college last month. I'm studying to become a special education teaching assistant. I want to work with disabled kids. I want to be the person who protects them instead of the person who hurts them. I want to spend the rest of my life making up for what I did to you. I saw your conference speech online. It was incredible, powerful. Everything you said was true. We were part of the problem. I was part of the problem. But I'm trying to be part of the solution now. Thank you for not letting us destroy you. Thank you for standing up when you had every reason to hide. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. I don't expect a response. I just needed you to know. Trent Holloway. Harper read the email 3 times, 4 times, 5. Trent was becoming a special education assistant. The man who had violated her dignity for entertainment was now dedicating his life to protecting children like the ones he'd mocked. She didn't know how to feel. Anger still simmered beneath the surface. The humiliation still burned when she thought about it too long. But something else was there too. Something that felt almost like hope. People could change. Sometimes, if they worked at it, if someone gave them the chance. Harper saved the email, didn't respond, wasn't ready to yet. Maybe never would be, but she didn't delete it either. That evening, Hank called a family meeting. The clubhouse common room filled with people, 40 members and their families. All of them gathered to hear whatever announcement was coming. Harper sat in her usual spot near the window. Rosie beside her, Jolene on her other side. 3 months ago, she hadn't known any of these people existed. Now she couldn't imagine her life without them. Hank stood at the front of the room, cleared his throat. Most of you know what happened 2 months ago. What Harper went through. What we all went through together. Nods around the room. People who had watched over her, guarded her, welcomed her into their midst. The threat's been neutralized. Damon's looking at 20 years minimum. Brody's still in county, but he's getting help, getting therapy. The judge took our recommendation into account. Hank paused, looked directly at Harper, which brings me to the reason for this meeting. Harper's heart rate accelerated. She had no idea what was coming. 3 months ago, Harper was a stranger, someone we helped because helping people is what we do. But she's not a stranger anymore. He walked toward her, each step deliberate, measured. She's family, and family needs a home. Jolene squeezed Harper's hand. There were tears in the older woman's eyes. We've been working on something, Hank continued. A project, something we started years ago for Rosie when she got older. A place where she could live independently, but still be close to family, still be safe. He stopped in front of Harper. We finished it last week. Small apartment, private entrance, accessible bathroom, kitchen modified for wheelchair use. Everything you need. Harper couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at this man who had become a father figure in the span of weeks. It's yours if you want it, Hank said. No rent, no obligations, just a home, a place to belong. The room fell silent, 40 people waiting for Harper's response. She thought about her apartment in town, the place she'd lived for 5 years, the place where she'd hidden from a world that didn't want her, the place where she'd been so lonely that she'd gone to a diner every Tuesday just to hear other people talking. She thought about this clubhouse, the noise and case and warmth of it, the people who treated her like family, the 15-year-old girl who had become her best friend, the couple who had become substitute parents. She thought about belonging, really belonging. Since her parents died, she'd never felt like she truly belonged anywhere. Yes, Harper whispered, then louder. Yes, I want it. I want to stay. The room erupted, cheers and applause and people rushing forward to congratulate her. Rosie threw her arms around Harper so hard the wheelchair nearly tipped over. Jolene was crying openly now. Even Hank had something suspiciously like moisture in his eyes. Welcome home, he said. Welcome home. The move took 2 days. Harper didn't have much. 5 years of hiding from life didn't accumulate many possessions. A few boxes of clothes, her books, her laptop, the worn copy of Persuasion that had been her only companion for so long. Rosie helped unpack, organize Harper's bookshelves with meticulous precision, alphabetized by author, then by publication date within each author's section. This is perfect, Rosie declared, stepping back to admire her work. Now we can have book club whenever we want. The apartment was small but beautiful. Light poured through windows that overlooked the compound's back garden. The bathroom had grab bars and a roll-in shower. The kitchen counters were lowered to wheelchair height. Someone had put thought into this, years of thought, planning for a future that had seemed uncertain until now. Harper sat in her new living room, looked around at the space that was hers, really hers, not a temporary refuge, not a hiding place, a home. Jolene appeared in the doorway with a casserole dish, housewarming tradition. She set it on the counter. This is my mother's recipe. You heat it for 40 minutes at 350. Trust me, it's the best thing you'll ever taste. Harper felt tears threatening. She cried more in the past 3 months than in the previous 5 years combined. But these were tears she'd earned, tears of a life reclaimed. Thank you for everything, for the apartment, for accepting me, for making me feel like I belong. You do belong. Jolene sat down across from her. You always belonged. You just hadn't found your people yet. How did you know? Harper asked. That first day at the diner. How did you know you wanted to help me? Jolene was quiet for a moment, thoughtful. Because I saw myself in you, she finally said. Not the disability, the loneliness, the isolation, that look in your eyes like you'd given up on ever being seen. She reached across the table, took Harper's hand. I was like that once, before Hank, before the club. I was alone and scared and convinced that nobody would ever love me. Then I found my family, my people, and everything changed. Harper nodded, understanding perfectly. That's what I want for you, Jolene continued. That's what we all want for you, not to save you, not to fix you, just to walk beside you while you save yourself. The words settled into Harper's heart, found a home there. That night, Harper sat at her new desk, opened her laptop. The final revisions to her memoir were due next week. The publisher was excited, talking about a spring release, a book tour, media appearances. Her story was about to reach the world. She opened the document, read through the final chapter one more time, chapter 16, Finding Home. I used to think home was a place, four walls and a roof, somewhere to sleep, somewhere to hide. I was wrong. Home is people. Home is the family you choose and the family that chooses you back. Home is showing up for each other, standing up for each other, refusing to look away when the world turns cruel. I found my home in the back booth of a diner, in the roar of motorcycle engines, in the laughter of a 15-year-old girl who taught me that joy was possible, even when the world tried to beat it out of you. I found my home in the arms of people who barely knew me but loved me anyway. People who saw past the wheelchair to the person sitting in it. People who reminded me day after day that I was worthy of protection, worthy of respect, worthy of love. I'm not grateful that soup got dumped on my head. I'm not grateful for the trauma or the fear or the humiliation, but I'm grateful for what came after, for the family I found, for the voice I discovered, for the person I became when I stopped hiding and started living. Harper added the final paragraph, the words that would close her story and open the next chapter of her life. My name is Harper Sinclair. I'm disabled. I'm a writer. I'm an advocate. I'm a friend, a sister, a daughter. Not by blood, but by choice. And I'm no longer invisible. She saved the document, sent it to her editor, closed her laptop. Outside, the Montana night was clear and cold. Stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. The clubhouse hummed with activity, music drifting from the main building, laughter echoing across the compound. The sounds of family. Harper's phone buzzed. Text from Rosie. Book club in 10 minutes. I'm bringing cookies. Also, I have a new theory about why Edmund Bertram is actually the worst Austen hero, and you need to hear it immediately. Harper smiled. Type back. Coming. And Edmund isn't that bad. He's just boring. 3 dots appeared. Then boring is the worst thing you can be. At least Willoughby was interesting when he was being terrible. Harper laughed out loud. The sound filled her small apartment, bounced off walls that were starting to feel like home. She wheeled toward the door, toward the noise, toward the family that was waiting for her. Thursday night had become sacred. Every week the clubhouse filled with people, members and their families, friends and neighbors, anyone who needed a meal and some company. Hank manned the grill. Jolene coordinated the potluck dishes. Rosie held court in the corner debating literature with anyone brave enough to challenge her. Harper had become a fixture at these gatherings, no longer the newcomer, no longer the woman everyone was protecting. Just Harper, part of the furniture, part of the family. This particular Thursday was 3 weeks after the conference. 3 weeks after her life had changed direction for the final time. 3 weeks of settling into her new apartment, revising her manuscript, planning for a future she'd never thought she'd have. The publisher had called that morning. Final approval on the book. Spring release confirmed. They wanted her to do a launch event at the Millbrook Library, a homecoming of sorts. The disabled woman who'd been humiliated in public was now returning as a published author. Harper hadn't told anyone yet. Wanted to savor the secret for a little while longer. She sat in her usual spot near the window, plate of ribs on her lap, glass of iced tea sweating in the warmth, watching her family laugh and argue, and love each other in all their messy, beautiful ways. Ox was teaching one of the younger kids how to throw a football. The boy couldn't have been more than 8, but Ox treated him like a star quarterback in the making. Willa was deep in conversation with a woman Harper didn't recognize. Something about the women's shelter, about a new program they were starting, about making safe spaces for people who'd never felt safe. Stone sat in the corner reading a motorcycle magazine, ignoring the chaos around him. But Harper caught him smiling when one of the kids ran past, shrieking with joy. Flint had set up his laptop on one of the tables, teaching a group of teenagers about coding, about technology, about building things that could change the world. And Rosie, always Rosie, currently explaining to anyone who would listen why Mary Shelley was the true founder of science fiction and how dare anyone give that credit to a man. These were her people, her family, the strange, wonderful leather-clad angels who had lifted her out of the darkness and showed her what life could be. Hank sat down beside her, handed her a fresh plate of cornbread. "You look happy," he observed. "I am happy," Harper said, "and it still surprises me every single day." "Good, you deserve it." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the chaos, feeling the warmth. "I got some news today," Harper finally said. Hank raised an eyebrow. "The book is done. Publisher approved it. Spring release. They want me to do a launch event here in Millbrook." Hank's face cracked into a rare, full smile. "That's wonderful. Congratulations." "Thank you," Harper paused, "for everything. Not just today. Everything. You saved my life. You and Jolene and everyone here. I was dying before you found me. Not physically, but in every way that mattered." Hank shook his head. "We didn't save you. We just gave you a chance to save yourself. You did all the hard work." Harper thought about that, about the months of healing, the therapy sessions, the memoir that had poured out of her like blood from an old wound, the conference speech that had terrified her and transformed her in equal measure. Maybe they were both right. Maybe salvation was always a collaborative effort. Rosie appeared out of nowhere, as she always did. "Harper, book club, now. I've been waiting all day to discuss the ending of Persuasion, and I literally cannot wait another second." Harper looked at Hank. He shrugged. "The lady has spoken." Harper followed Rosie to their usual corner, the one with the comfortable chairs and the good lighting, the one that had become their sanctuary within a sanctuary. Rosie had brought cookies, chocolate chip, her grandmother's recipe that she guarded like a state secret. "Okay." Rosie settled into her chair with the intensity of a general preparing for battle. "Captain Wentworth's letter. Final thoughts. Go." They debated for an hour. About love and loss and second chances. About the courage it took to admit you were wrong. About the miracle of finding someone who saw you clearly and loved you anyway. Somewhere in the middle of their discussion, Harper realized something important. She wasn't just talking about fictional characters anymore. She was talking about herself, about finding people who saw past her wheelchair to the person sitting in it, about getting a second chance at connection after years of isolation, about the courage it took to let people in after being hurt so many times. Captain Wentworth had written a letter that changed everything. Harper had written a book. Same thing, really, just different mediums. "You're crying," Rosie observed, grateful tears. Harper wiped her eyes, the best kind. "I know," Rosie smiled. "I cause a lot of those around here. It's my superpower." Harper laughed, reached across and squeezed Rosie's hand. "You're my best friend. You know that, right?" "I know," Rosie said. "You're mine, too." The Thursday dinner wound down around 9. People drifted off to their homes. Dishes got washed. Tables got wiped down. The clubhouse returned to its usual quiet. Harper wheeled back to her apartment, the one with the private entrance and the accessible bathroom and the view of the garden. The one that had become home in ways her old apartment never had. She sat at her desk, opened her laptop, not to write this time, just to look. The manuscript sat there, complete, ready for the world. Finding Home, a memoir of disability cruelty and the family that saved me. Her story, her truth, her voice. In a few months it would be in bookstores, in libraries, in the hands of people who might see themselves in her words. People who were lonely and scared and convinced that nobody would ever understand. Harper would understand. Harper would tell them they weren't alone. That was the gift, not the publishing contract or the speaking opportunities or the advocacy work. The gift was connection. The gift was reaching out across the darkness and finding another hand reaching back. A soft knock at the door. Harper opened it to find Rosie standing there. Pajamas, messy hair, two books clutched to her chest. "Can't sleep," Rosie said. "Want to read together?" Harper smiled, moved aside to let her in. Always. They settled into their usual spots. Rosie in the armchair, Harper on the couch, both reading their own books, both sharing the space. This was family, not the big dramatic moments. The small ones, the quiet nights, the shared silences, the comfort of being with someone who didn't need you to perform or explain or justify your existence. Harper looked over at Rosie, this 15-year-old girl who had taught her so much about courage and joy in refusing to be diminished. "Rosie." The girl looked up from her book. "Thank you for being my friend." Rosie smiled, that brilliant, wholehearted smile that made the whole world seem brighter. "Thank you for being mine." They went back to reading. The night deepened around them. Stars wheeled overhead. The clubhouse settled into silence. Harper thought about everything that had brought her to this moment. The accident that killed her parents. The 5 years of isolation. The diner. The soup. The humiliation. And then the salvation. Hank and Jolene. The hellsangels. Rosie. The conference. The book. Every terrible thing had led to something beautiful. Every wound had become a window. Every ending had become a beginning. Harper closed her book, looked around at her apartment, her home, her life. She was Harper Sinclair. Disabled. Writer, advocate, friend, sister, daughter. Not by blood, by choice. And she was exactly where she belonged. The soup had burned, but what came after had healed her in ways she never thought possible. Harper smiled, settled deeper into the couch, let the peace of the moment wash over her. Outside, the Montana stars blazed against the darkness. The clubhouse stood quiet and solid. The motorcycles gleamed in the moonlight. And Harper Sinclair, who had once been invisible, was finally completely and wonderfully seen.